Fox, I'm Stephanie Quinu. Turning now to another major headline of the week as approximately 45,000 dock workers at East and Gulf Coast ports are returning to work after their union reached a deal to suspend a strike that could have caused shortages and higher prices if it had dragged on. The International Longshoremen Association has suspended its three-day strike until January 15th. To provide time to negotiate a new contract. The ports have agreed to raise wages to 62% over 6 years, up from the previously offered 50%. But the focus is now on the automation of ports, which the unions say will lead to fewer jobs. The union had been demanding a 77% raise over 6 years, plus a complete ban on the use of automation at the ports, which members see as a threat to their jobs. Both sides have also been apart on the issues of pension contributions and the distribution of royalties paid on containers that are moved by workers. To speak more on this, I do want to bring in Jessica Kriegel, the Chief Strategy Officer for Culture Partners. And Jessica, thank you for taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks for having me.
So there was a lot of concern as the strike entered into day 3 in terms of the impact that it might have on our economy. Because the strike was suspended after 3 days, is it going to have a long-lasting impact, or is it just going to be a little hiccup?
We are in the clear for now. I don't think that the American consumer is going to feel the impact in the prices that they're paying for goods, nor do I think that businesses are going to suffer significantly. We should be back on track, but the threat is not over because, as you mentioned, this is just a suspension of the strike until January of 2025. There is still a major sticking point that they have not agreed to, and if they don't agree by January 15th, then we could be back in the same situation that we were this last week, which could have far-reaching implications that are going to negatively affect both businesses and American citizens.
So one of the major sticking points that they seem to have already compromised on, of course, is the wage hike. But as you mentioned, the biggest sticking point, it does seem to be the automation of ports. And the union really doesn't want that to happen because it could lead to fewer jobs for them. When it comes to that issue, how far apart are the two sides?
Well, it all depends on the level of automation that will be allowed. And what the unions are saying is we only want enough automation that allows us to be more productive, but not any automation that will ultimately kill jobs. But when you see the actual things that they're arguing about parking gates opening and closing and time stamping being done by hand with a person who's a scheduler versus a machine. And so they're fairly far apart. And I think the American people are now aware of something, a threat to the supply chain that they weren't aware of before. What this strike has done is highlighted, in my opinion, the need for automation in these ports, because on a whim, this union leader has decided they are interested in crippling the American economy. That's a quote. He said, "I will cripple you." And so do we really want someone having that much power over the materials that come into the United States? I don't think so. I think if they were automated, we would be a lot safer as a people. So I'm actually concerned about this more than I ever was before, as I think many people are. They've highlighted something that we're all at risk about.
And when we take a look at automation, that really just seems to be the way that every single industry is going when it comes to making everything more efficient and possibly more secure, as you pointed out. So when it comes to this sticking point, where do you see it going? Obviously, you said you're very concerned. January 15th really is just only a few months away. There's not much time in order to come to some sort of agreement.
Yeah, they already have language in the contract that prevents automation. What the union is asking for is to scale it back. They're trying to create, they said, quote, airtight language that will prevent any type of automation, which baffles me because there is a certain amount of automation that I'm sure that they want in order to make it easier to move things around. So this is going to be a challenging situation and negotiation that they're going to have to get through. This is unprecedented in any other industry. Think about the IT industry, for example. If an IT union suddenly said, we cannot allow any more technology or automation. Just last night, I was speaking to someone in the IT industry who said, within a year or two, my job will be obsolete. I said, well, are you worried? What are you going to do? He said, oh, no, this is fine. It happens every 10 years. It's my job to upskill. And so I think it's up to the longshoremen to upskill over the course of this next contract so that they have an option for where they're going to go next. Because ultimately, this cannot be anti automation for the rest of time at the ports. I don't think American people will stand for it.
So again, the agreement really the strike was just suspended earlier this week. So likely not much negotiation has happened. But when we take a look at the calendar to January 15th, are you optimistic that another strike will be averted, or do you think that that is quite possible?
It's certainly possible. I know that the White House has been involved in the negotiations and putting pressure on both sides to come to an agreement. So hopefully that third party mediation continues and they will be able to get somewhere by January 15th.
Is there anything else that you're keeping a very close eye on when it comes to these negotiations?
Well, I think the impact that these negotiations have on other collective bargaining negotiations is important because what you'll see oftentimes with these union leaders, they'll talk about other strikes that have impacted their ability or their leverage. This particular union has a lot of leverage because of the impact that a strike has on imports. Other unions don't have as much leverage, and yet they still compare their ability to move wages up and negotiate other deal points. And so I think this might be a talking point for other unions as they go into negotiations through the end of the year and in next year as well.
When it comes to unions themselves, and not everyone might be familiar, but it does seem like this is quite a powerful union. If they were to strike, it does seem as though the industry and these 36 ports would be at a standstill. Is there any way to circumnavigate that, or is it simply coming to an agreement?
Well, certainly. And I think a lot of businesses in America were anticipating a possible strike this time around, and they did circumnavigate it by either shipping certain materials through air freight, which is 5 to 10 times more expensive, or navigating through to the West ports. And so that's one option. The second option is just to hold tight. But this union leader has said he looks forward to creating chaos, that he intentionally hopes that certain organizations will have to have layoffs because they weren't able to receive their materials and that the costs will be pushed down to the American consumer. So the impact of this is something that he's counting on to maintain his leverage, which is something that personally frightens me a little bit.
Well, it is certainly going to be interesting to see as we get closer to January 15th whether a deal will be made or whether we can expect another strike. Jessica, we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks so much for